it's Jessica. Welcome to Teen Time Crafts. Today we are going to go green by making some reusable food wrap out of material and beeswax. So the idea here is that you take some 100% cotton fabric and you put it on a baking sheet. So you will need a baking sheet. You sprinkle your uh, beeswax on top of it, and then you put it in the oven. The oven can be very low, just at 200. You just put it in there for a couple minutes until the beeswax is completely melted, and then you take it out, you let it cool down, and then you have this reusable food wrap. And it does work a little bit differently than regular cling wrap or foil in that the wax makes it a little stiff. So to use it, you need to sort of warm it with your hands a little bit. So if you're putting it around a piece of fruit or a vegetable, you just kind of have to mold it a little bit with your hands, get it around the item, and then kind of, hold it a little bit. And the heat of your hands will melt the wax just enough so that it stays in that position. So this is one that I would use probably for, like maybe a leftover piece of onion when I was cooking to save it for next time. And then we do have some larger pieces of fabric that you might be able to use for, larger items, sandwiches, that kind of thing. This one probably could be used as a sandwich, but it might be a little skimpy for it. So we can get started. You will need, you will be supplied from the library craft kit with fabric and beeswax. In addition to that, you will need a baking sheet. If you have it, you can also line the baking sheet with parchment paper, just so that the wax doesn't get on your actual baking sheet. And you'll need somewhere to put the wrap once it's cooling. It cools pretty quickly, but obviously the wax will get on things before it's completely dry. So I have like a cookie cooling rack that I put this one on. It does have some lines on it because of that. But it doesn't seem to have affected the effectiveness of the wrap. You can also make sort of a makeshift sort of clothesline to hang the wrap on. It's just important that it can stay pretty flat, because when it is saturated in the melted wax, it gets very floppy and it can very easily sort of fold over and then stick to itself. And then if it dries like that, it's not great. So you do want it to be able to stay pretty flat while it's drying. And then the last thing that you'll need is something to pick up the wrap from the baking sheet, because of course the baking sheet will be hot. So you'll also need a pot holder, but the baking sheet will be hot. So if you have tongs or even just a fork or something that you can kind of like get the corner up off the baking sheet. Even when I touched this, when it was just out of the oven, of course the baking sheet was very hot, so I didn't want to go near that. But it was hot, but it was manageable. Like it didn't burn me. So definitely tongs and not touching it are preferable. But even if you gotta like kind of pick it up real quick and like throw it on a cooling sheet, it's not too terrible. And of course, have an adult help you if you're not really sure, and it is hot, so be careful. So maybe help each other if you're in the same household, or have an adult help you if you're not comfortable using the oven by yourself. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to move the camera over to my cooking area. So since I used one of the smaller pieces of fabric in my first attempt, I'm going to use this large piece of floral fabric this time. If you don't want one that's this big, you can always cut it, and you can cut it to whatever size and shape you want. So if you want a round one, if you have some pinking shears at home and you want to cut it with those. You can do that. But, this is just, I pulled it straight out of the package. It has flat edges, and I'm just going to use it like this. I have preheated my oven to 200 degrees with a rack in the center of the oven. And I've put my parchment paper. I do have some wax on the baking sheet that I have not attempted to get off yet from my previous attempt. So this time I'm going to use the parchment paper. If you hear anything in the background, I apologize because my stupid cat is playing with some crinkle paper. Anyway, so this piece of material is too big for this baking sheet, so you can just fold it. This is going to be a little bit of an experiment for both of us because I have not done a larger piece like this yet. However, you can just fold it because once the wax is melted, it's a liquid, so it'll go straight through, and it's thin material. So what we're using here today are little pellets like this. You can get like a big block of beeswax and then grate it over the pan, but these are so much easier and more convenient. So we're just going to sprinkle them on. You do want to get it a little bit around the edges and then all over the top. And because I have multiple layers here, I do want to use a little bit extra so that it can go through all the layers. Okay, I think that'll be good. There we go. So I'm going to put this in the oven for 2-3 minutes. We'll probably actually do it, but you do want to keep an eye on it because you don't want it to burn. Okay, so here we have it. And as you can see, it is saturated all the way through. So I don't want it to dry folded. Come on. I'm going to open it up. It's already not that hot. And there we have it. So, well, you can see my little cage back there. Who knows what's in it? You get points if you guess right. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of assistance with cooling faster since I don't have a makeshift place to hang it. You can see in the corners where it's a little bit lighter. It didn't get as saturated, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. I don't think that's a problem. I could always put it back in the oven with a little extra beeswax right there. Basically with the beeswax, it'll just melt and cool and melt and cool. So if you take it out of the oven and it's not saturated enough, like this one is, you can just put it back in with more beeswax. I would say this ended up actually being in the oven about 5 minutes because there was more wax on it than my first attempt. It's already starting to toughen up. Listen. You can already hear, maybe, or at least see, that it's starting to move a little stiffer. So I'm going to lay it down here for it to continue to dry. So with these food wraps, you can use them. You can use them instead of traditional disposable food wraps for several uses. Basically until they start to fall apart and the wax starts to crack. Even when the wax starts to crack, again, you could just bake it again with more wax on it, and then it's good to go. You do want to be careful how you wash them. You want to wash them gently in water, not too hot, of course, because it could melt the wax. But you can just kind of rinse them gently. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You are good to go. And now your lunch or snack or whatever you're wrapping up, your leftovers, are just a little bit more eco-friendly than they were before. There are also other ways to make these wraps, also using beeswax, but you can use beeswax along with pine resin, and some people put in like jojoba oil to make it a little bit more flexible and a little stickier so that it acts a little bit more like traditional cling wrap. But honestly, this is perfectly serviceable and it's cheaper and way easier. So this is what I decided to go with today. Let us know how your food wraps came out. You can always send us pictures of yourself, making the craft or your finished product, or of you using them to cover your food with, to our Instagram, Finkelstein Library, or to our email address, fmlchild@rcls.org. We'd love to get your pictures to share on our social media to show people enjoying our crafts. Until next time, have a great day. Bye.